Do you know that you need to get yourself outside your comfort zone more than you did in 2024 to have more self belief, to shed that imposter syndrome feeling that shows up? Today's episode, I'm going to tell you how you can set yourself up to make 2025 the year that you do all of those things. I'm Ian Hawkins, and this is Sport is Life. The purpose of sport, as I see it, is to see your vision become a reality. Find your voice, create strong connections, and learn to trust your body. If you want to increase your performance in different areas of your life, find more consistency, upgrade your personal brand so that people take notice, so that people can see just how valuable you are, the impact that you are having, and really recognize that. When you're trying to grow, one of the challenges that can come up is imposter syndrome, that feeling that you're not good enough, that feeling that despite the fact that people might look at you at a certain level or as an authority or an expert or you have a certain role, there's part of you that feels like a fraud because there are times where you just don't get it right. And you have that thought, lucky they don't know what's going on in my head. Lucky they can't see behind the curtain and see what's really going on because I'm not that good. That's where that self-doubt creeps in. And you may have had those feelings or thoughts or even identify with that term, imposter syndrome. Now, one of the ways that you can change that requires you to get out of your comfort zone. I want you to look at it like this. Think about when you have to go on a plane ride. Think about for a plane, well, not the plane itself, but the actual trip, how many of the different areas of life show up on that trip. If you're going somewhere for work, then it can have you maybe working on the flight or trying to switch off and relax. Maybe you've not slept enough if it's an early start, or maybe it's you're excited, you're going on holiday and you're just absolutely pumped for the trip. Maybe it's been the end of a long period of time and you're actually exhausted heading on this trip and you're trying to get yourself recharged for the holiday. For some people, flights are scary. They find it really quite challenging. There's a social element. You're either flying with people and you're hanging out, you're chatting, but you're also sometimes just talking to random strangers, or so the real social element. Think about the plane itself. It requires it to be in balance and it hits turbulence like we do in our life. Now, let's look at what gives the plane the ability to actually fly. So it requires energy. It requires structure. So it needs to be built a certain way. So, of course, it requires navigation. You need to know where you're heading, and you need to have a map and a plan, and you need to be driving it. There needs to be a pilot, right? The environment's important. You can't just take off in any weather. And everything has to be in the right place for you to be able to move forward and that flight to go well. Preparation, all those different things. So if you look at that, how you would look at your life, all of those different areas of life, we experience them all. Now, to be at our best and give ourselves the best chance and make sure we get to our destination safely, then you too need to have a navigation system. You need to have a game plan. You need to know what you're working towards, and you need to have a plan, some structure on how to actually get there. You need to have energy. You can't keep burning yourself out. You can't keep pushing yourself to the limit. You can't keep then, what's the expression, treating your body like an amusement park on the weekend. So putting the wrong things in there, pushing your body to limits that maybe you can't do anymore, and not putting yourself in environments that aren't safe, that aren't good for your health. Because when you can if you're doing all of those things and you're just going to keep yourself in that pattern, you're going to, when you hit that stage of imposter syndrome or trying to grow, then the way you've been treating yourself and the lack of energy is just going to really fuel that self-doubt. But if you want to take off, if you want to fly, and you want to actually go to all new levels, and of course get to your destination safely and feeling strong and energized, then you need to change some of those patterns, some of those behaviors, and you need to get them right. So if you've just got through this last year and you feel like you're hanging on, you're like hanging onto the wing or out the window, or you're on the flight, but you're not really there, you're checked out, you're exhausted, you're snoozing. Or maybe it just feels like the flight is all over the place. Like there's a lot of turbulence. You haven't got that steady navigation, and the flight is literally jumping all over the place. Well, then what do you need to change so that next year you finish the year with momentum that you can take into the next year? Because if you are feeling that way, if you're feeling flat, then you can take that momentum straight into the next year, and it can take you a while to get going. I equate it to that when you're preparing for something in a sporting context. If you don't know what the next thing is, what the next event is, what the next thing you need to be working towards, then you'll hit the end of a period of time. Maybe you have an event or a run, a game, and then you'll take your foot off the pedal and you relax and you won't have any of that momentum. But if you know what's next, if you've got a game the next week, or you know that you've got a pre-season starting, or if you're a runner or a cyclist, you've got another event coming up and it's booked in, then you'll give yourself some time off, but you'll get yourself back on track. Now, next year, if you don't know what you're working towards and you don't have a plan, then of course imposter syndrome is going to creep in, because you'll start to have doubts when you're not prepared, when you haven't got things in place, when you haven't got energy, and you're not in an environment that's conducive to growth, to you improving yourself and improving that personal brand. So it requires you, it requires you to get outside your comfort zone to be able to do that. So this year, it's nearly done, but you've not run out of time. So like I've mentioned earlier in the week, I'm running a free training to help you get all these things in place, to have that self-awareness of, okay, what isn't working at the moment? What has been stopping me? What's been getting in the way? Identify that resistance so that you can have that action happening. And then importantly, find what the best strategy is for you to move forward and make next year the absolute best year it can be. So go to the link in the show notes, Sport is Life movement. You'll go in there, and the training, it actually starts today when this episode is released, but you'll be able to go into the guide section of the Facebook group, and all of the training will be in there, and it's going to help set you up for the new year. It's going to give you all of the structure, some planning, some self-awareness around where you're at and what needs to change, and give you all of those things you need to set yourself up for the best year. I'll leave it there for today. If you know this is something you need, but you're feeling like maybe you're tired and you're run down, it's just questioning, like, can I just give myself these short bits of training to get myself set up, just for this one last push so that next year I can face it in a completely different way? If you know you need this, but you're not quite sure if you've got the energy, then it might just require some honest self-reflection of making sure you make this happen, even though maybe you're not feeling it at the moment. I said I was leaving it there. I kept talking. I will definitely finish off now. Have an awesome day. I'll speak to you soon. You've taken the time to listen to this whole episode. Now it's time to take action. Commit to one thing you've learned today and make it happen. And to avoid any obstructions, join the Sport is Life movement by clicking on the link in the show notes.